The investment potential for Uzbekistan is manifold. You have a fast-growing economy, you have a fast-growing population, a young and dynamic population. You have a really substantial set of reforms with a commitment to continue to reform, and a huge amount of opportunity and a whole load of natural assets. That's a really strong opportunity for the country, and it is being harnessed by this government and by the president really for good. And I think international investors are beginning to see that.
Last question. Could you share future plans, your cooperation with Uzbekistan?
Well, we already have a strong cooperation with Uzbekistan, not just on the equity markets, but on the debt markets as well. And I think, look, we want to be the shop window for Uzbekistan to international investors. And so for not only state-owned enterprises, but for private companies that want access for liquidity, we want to be that place.
What is the biggest obstacle preventing more Uzbek companies from attracting international investors and entering global capital markets?
Well, I think we've just seen with UzNIF that there isn't an obstacle to them entering global capital markets. They've just done so incredibly successfully. One of the issues is companies need to get to a certain scale and maturity and structure in order to be able to meet the demands of international markets. But I think what the UzNIF fund has shown is that the underlying strength of the Uzbek economy is something that international investors want to back. So very often it's about companies feeling that they have that ambition and that scale.
Has investor perception of Uzbekistan changed in the recent years? And what still needs to improve to build greater confidence?
I think the answer is it has changed enormously because of the reform agenda and the real change here. I mean, this country is changing rapidly and radically, and its economy is growing quickly, and there is a commitment to stability and to reform and to lower inflation and all of the things that international investors need, and that is what is changing the mindset. The challenge markets have is if they can't buy something that's representing a country, they can't invest in the country. And so the reason that UzNIF fund was so important is it does open that gateway for international investors to do the work, to understand the Uzbek economy and direct capital into it. And I think we'll see that.
And I wanted to ask, if you had 1 minute to convince a global investor to choose Uzbekistan over other emerging markets, what would you say?
Look, I think every investor has to make their own decision, don't they? But you have a growth in the underlying economy. You have a fundamental range of assets and natural resources, not just the natural resources, but Uzbekistan has, but it's people, and the dynamism and the growth of its population as well. Combine that with a really, really forward-looking, disciplined reform agenda that is delivering and really focused on what I would say is the tangible problems. What do investors coming into Uzbekistan really need to have solved for them in order to make it easier for them to invest? That is the exam question this government's asking itself and seeking to answer. And I think the track record and the forward plan is one that investors will want to back.
From your experience, for example, you talked about Uzbekistan National Investment Fund, and what would you see as the success for Uzbekistan National Investment Fund? Because they raised $600 million.
Yep.
But then what would be the success for it in the future?
So, look, the fund was designed, I think, as that, what I describe as that shop window, the opportunity to show the Uzbek economy to international investors. Ultimately, each one of those companies on their own could list. So the real success would be that they grow and they scale, they get access to that capital, and they can stand on their own 2 feet. And the fund and the companies themselves will be listing. But I think the real test is not just whether you have state-owned enterprises listing. The real test is whether you then have private sector companies listing. And some of those that I've met here who are so dynamic and producing really, really good product at great growth rates have the opportunity to list in London as much as state-owned enterprises do. Well, privatization is what's happening already, but you also have private sector companies. Not every company in Uzbekistan is in the public sector. You have a lot of private companies that are being created right now that are growing fast and providing services for people in Uzbekistan. That's the same as any other country in the world in terms of access to markets.
What sector is the most attractive to investors, for example?
I'm not certain that's the way investors in Uzbekistan would think. I think obviously sectors that are fast growing, IP based, etc., are attractive to international investors. But to me, a lot of the investment proposition for Uzbekistan is Uzbekistan itself. It's recognized. Well, because of the growth of the economy. If you're buying UzNIF, you're buying something that represents the economy as a whole. And that's the attractive opportunity that people are getting exposure to. And so I think in the first transaction we've seen for the country, it's more about the value proposition of the country as a whole rather than any individual sector.